What's up everyone, Alex here. One of my favorite video games of this current generation has to be 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. It blended elements of traditional adventure games and its strong narrative strengths, often associated with visual novels, with tower defense style gameplay. But perhaps its biggest innovations have more to do with letting the player choose how much of the story or gameplay that they want to take in at any given time, within limits of course. This is the game that I constantly thought about while I played through the 100-line Last Defense Academy, which I played on the Nintendo Switch. Thanks to XSEED for the code, by the way. Like 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, this game blends a narrative-heavy story with tower defense-style gameplay. And much like many 2Q games before it, it's overseen by Danganronpa's Kazutaka Kodaka and Zero Escape's Kotaro Uchikoshi. But with this duo's previous work on Master Detective Archive's Raincode fresh in people's minds, one has to wonder, is this yet another deviation from the much-beloved structure of Danganronpa? Or does this game herald a second coming from the team responsible for that game? I'll be answering these questions by addressing both longtime Danganronpa fans as well as newcomers to this team's games. And as always, no spoilers here. In the 100-line Last Defense Academy, you play the role of Takumi Sumino, a normal run-of-the-mill high school student who is unexpectedly conscripted to fight a battle that he knows nothing about. He is told that he and his other classmates are humanity's last hope, and they'll be giving their all in 100 days of service, after which they're promised to be taken back to their homes. But, as with many good mysteries, the identity of these invading forces, as well as the people responsible for your involvement, lurk behind the scenes, setting up a narrative that's filled with secrets and surprises galore. The general gameplay loop of the 100-line Last Defense Academy has you implicitly starting up new chapters, followed by free time sections that let you prepare for the next battle, which eventually leads to a final battle featuring a boss, followed by the ensuing story outcome that closes out the chapter. This is, of course, a purposeful oversimplification, as there will be wrenches thrown in that'll occasionally change things up. The tower defense battles are wave-based, with each wave clearly starting and ending. Battles begin by giving you a limited amount of AP to use to command your party, in addition to being given the first turn. Once you've ended your turn, either by using all of your AP or manually ending it, your enemies will make their move, alternating between your turn and theirs until the battle's win or lose conditions are met. During your turn, you get to control a handful of students, each with their own unique skills and passives, and the game does a very good job of laying out how they're designed. For example, for the initial team, you have Takumi, an all-around fighter that's got good offense and defense, Hiroko, a powerful fighter that's really good at dispatching enemies with tons of health and gains AP the more she kills, Takemaru, a tank whose shield strength is determined by how far he travels across the field, and Darumi, a ranged attacker whose abilities change when she gets fatigued. This aforementioned fatigue state always happens every time a character takes an action. You're still able to command fatigued players to take action, though their movement will be heavily impaired. Given that you'll be attacked by waves of enemies, the offensive skills you'll have at your disposal will cover a certain amount of squares, which you can rotate using the right stick. Because AP is so limited, you'll have to be careful with positioning your party as they can be easily surrounded by the massive hordes. Thankfully, as you defeat enemies, you'll be building up a voltage meter that, when it reaches at least 100%, allows any member of your party to unleash a super damaging special attack that's got ridiculous range. The catch-22 is that once they do, they'll be stuck in a stun state until the end of the next turn, leaving them temporarily vulnerable. Alternatively, you can also trigger this special attack when your character's health is low. The only catch to this is that once you do, that character dies and is removed from that wave. Using special moves in either of these ways doesn't consume AP, and the game encourages you to utilize both when things get rough. You can also spend voltage to power up a character in a variety of ways, such as increasing their normal attack strength or delaying the onset of fatigue. Ultimately, I found that composing your party and considering each character's strengths and range to be one of the most fun parts of the game. Having skills cover a set amount of squares evokes this feeling that I'm preparing for a deadly game of Tetris, and the types of passives and skills that each character has matches up with each of their personalities extremely well, making it very easy to associate a character with their appearance, their skills and passives, and behavior together. And being able to compose a strong team conversely makes playing the game's battles a ton of fun, despite the way that the game treats its cast. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The free time sections function similarly to both Danganronpa and Persona, in that you'll be given several days to prepare for the next battle, with certain activities advancing the time of day and eventually forcing the next day to come. For the most part, time moves forward in the 100-line Last Defense Academy each time you hang out with a classmate that's got a spark icon on their heads. You'll want to prioritize hanging out with your friends because doing so improves Takumi's grades, which are split between 5 subjects, with a couple of secondary disciplines that you can build up. Specific characters boost specific disciplines, making it easy for you to decide how to prioritize your hangouts. These grades are important because they serve as locks that prevent you from upgrading certain characters' weapons, in addition to whatever materials you'll need to enhance them, which you can obtain by exploring beyond your home base in a board game-like fashion. Naturally, you can enhance your weapons during free time, but you can also participate in VR battles that allow you to take a party into battle to help them level up. While this style of gameplay feels fresh, especially given the kinds of games its developers made prior, there are a lot of elements of Danganronpa that have made its way into the 100-line Last Defense Academy. Several opening moments in the game mirror much of the aforementioned series, with Darumi going so far as to say that everyone's in a killing game, which is an obvious nod. Navigating through the free time sections is done in a side-scrolling fashion, much like the latter Danganronpa titles. The point-and-click exploratory sequences in your base are very much like how you'd interact and investigate things in Danganronpa. And much like said game, only the major story parts are voiced. Otherwise, it's a lot of reading, with no accompanying voiceovers. Speaking of voice acting, I found the performances to be a bit average and a little bit less on par with the Danganronpa games. A couple of particular instances that irked me a lot was when Takumi was called by his nickname, Taki, which was pronounced Taki. Still, it's not horrendous, though I will restate that the entire game isn't voice acted, and that you still have a choice of using the original Japanese voiceovers if that's more of your style. I also want to revisit the 13 Sentinels comparisons that I made earlier with relation to the story and gameplay. One of the reasons why 13 Sentinels designed its story and gameplay to be housed in separate sections was because of early player feedback saying that people got tired of the game quickly because there was too much story that front-loaded each battle. Because the 100-line Last Defense Academy tells a mostly linear story, you're forced to adhere to the gameplay loop I described earlier with very little deviation. So if you're the kind of person who didn't like how much story Triangle Strategy had, and how you relied too much on replaying the same battles over and over, keep in mind that this is exactly what you'll be doing here, albeit with a few other kinds of activities thrown in. That said, fans of Danganronpa should be used to how verbose this game's script can be, and will most likely enjoy the new ways of playing the game despite its many familiar themes. Speaking of themes, one very common theme that carried over from Danganronpa is how the games treat its cast. These games often cast a shadow that hides what's really going on from its reluctant characters, while forcing them to engage in activities that they truly don't want to participate in. I sometimes think that the developers find sadistic pleasure in putting its cast in awful situations, so if that's a thing that has turned you off from Danganronpa, this game won't be any different. Generally speaking, these games also evoke a sort of loathing of humanity's desire to obtain ultimate comfort, with many not making the most out of the lives that they've been given, which isn't so dissimilar to the Saw movies, if you've ever seen them. Though, to be fair, the characters in Kazutaka Kodaka's games are rarely likable, even if you do eventually settle with a few favorites. Though I will say, and this is extremely important, you must play through the game again after the end credits to fully experience the game, with many of the choices you'll make the second time around affecting the story in more significant ways. Criticisms aside, and as a fan of the Danganronpa games, I do find that the 100-line Last Defense Academy does a great job of taking the strengths of both Kodaka and Uchikoshi and merely tweaking a few things here and there, mainly the gameplay, to deliver something familiar yet fresh. Out of all of their previous experimentations, this is the game where their talents truly shine, despite the constant need for deaths to happen, which could potentially sour some newcomers' tastes. And while much of its presentation is practically Danganronpa, a completely new narrative, coupled with its fun and easy to understand strategy, gameplay, and systems, make it a fun mystery to want to solve.